Morning and welcome. Thank you so much for choosing to spend your Saturday with us here at the Schulz Museum. We are celebrating our 15th anniversary, and it's amazing that we've been here for 15 years, and we thank you so much for joining us to celebrate this event. We have activities all throughout the day, so after this talk, we have a couple other events. We have Nathan Hale, who'll do creator of Hazardous Tales, will be giving a live exclusive Hazardous Tale here in the theater at 12:15. We also have a whole bunch of cartoonists who'll be outside in our great hall from 12 to 2 p.m. We'll be giving away museum prizes. And if you haven't gotten your exclusive commemorative keychain, that's in our courtyard. Make sure you get one today. They're free for everybody who's here today, commemorating our 15th anniversary. And we're super excited that at 1 p.m. we have Raina Telgemeier here as well, who'll be signing books. So everyone who's giving that great excited look, she will be here in our great hall at 1 p.m. signing books. But right now, I am thrilled to welcome New York Times best-selling author and illustrator Jarrett Krosoczka, whose credits include over 30 published books. Among these are the popular Lunch Lady graphic novels, the Platypus Police Squad middle grade novels, and the Star Wars Jedi Academy series. Krosoczka is a two-time winner of the Children's Choice Book Awards, 3rd to 4th grade books of the year, and has been a finalist for the prestigious Will Eisner Comic Industry Award. He has delivered 2 TED Talks, which have collectively accrued more than 2 million views online. Krosoczka has been featured on NPR and can be heard weekly on The Book Report with JJK on Sirius XM's Kids Place Live, a show focusing on books, authors, and readings. His Punk Farm, Lunch Lady, and Platypus Police Squad series are all currently in development for films. Jarrett will be available after this talk to sign books and speak with visitors in our great hall, and we do have his books for sale here today. So please make sure that after this talk, you come on out and meet Jarrett in our great hall. But right now, please join me in giving him a really warm welcome.
Thank you. And that was a flawless pronunciation of Krosoczka, so thank you for that. You've been practicing, haven't you? Well, hi, thank you for joining me. I'm so excited to be here at the Charles M. Schulz Museum because, like so many of you, I just love Snoopy. There I am, not one, but 2 Snoopy dolls. And I remember bringing Snoopy everywhere with me when I was a kid. And I remember reading Snoopy all the time when I was a kid. I still have some of my collections. And I just so vividly remember every day after work, my grandfather would come home, and I can hear that front door opening and him walking down that front hall and placing the newspaper on the kitchen table. And I would grab it, and I would go right for the comic section and read Snoopy. And I remember being in 4th grade and painting this Snoopy. And I was in Mrs. Beatty's art class at Gates Lane School in Worcester, Massachusetts. And I remember painting Snoopy, and I was really excited about how it was turning out. And then I spilt paint in a spot where I did not mean to spill paint. And I was devastated. So I was ready to just crumple up the paper and throw it away. And Mrs. Beatty stopped me. And she said, well, Jarrett, this is an opportunity to make something different, something that you didn't plan to make. So instead of just throwing it away, I sort of disguised that spilled paint with all of those swatches of color. And then Mrs. Beatty put this painting in a student art exhibit at the Worcester Art Museum. And I remember being 9 years old or 10 years old and going to the Worcester Art Museum and seeing my art, up in the little gallery. And it was this piece right here. So I'm not the only person in my family who liked to draw. My mother was also a very talented artist. And she drew this Snoopy for me when I was a kid. And here I am with a much bigger Snoopy, a little later in life. And holidays are a really big deal in the Krosoczka house. We love Halloween. In fact, my neighbors call me the Clark Griswold of Halloween. And so every year we project a Snoopy Halloween special on the side of our house. And Christmas is a big deal at our house too. We go crazy. We decorate everything. Now, but this ornament I've had since I was a child. I remember being a little boy and hanging this ornament on the tree every single year. And now we still hang it. It's like a spiritual experience, taking out this Snoopy ornament, and now my kids are hanging it on. And it is not Christmas time unless we put the music of the Charlie Brown Christmas. And our second daughter, her name is Lucy, which is short for Lucia, and her first birthday was themed Snoopy, or Lucy. And so all the party guests took their photos next to that little setup. So for me, it all started, everything that I do, it started when I was a kid. I loved to draw, and I loved reading comics. I loved reading comics because of Charles Schulz's work. And I was raised by my grandparents, Joseph and Shirley, in Worcester, Massachusetts. This is my preschool family portrait. And this is Joe and Cheryl. And they were always very supportive of me as an artist and sent me to take classes at the Worcester Art Museum when I was starting in 6th grade. And I was obsessed with characters. So, I loved Snoopy, but I also loved Optimus Prime. And I also loved Batman and the Ninja Turtles. And I would learn how to draw by copying these characters. Now, when I was in 3rd grade at Gates Lane School, I wrote a book for the first time. And I so remember my teacher teaching us all about brainstorming and organizing our ideas and writing a rough draft and editing and revising. And all of those lessons that I learned as a 3rd grader in making this book, I use those lessons today. I brainstorm, I organize, I edit, I revise. And, this was all the preparatory work for that book. When you open up the book, the first page you saw was the title page. So, at 8 years old, I was clearly concerned about my intellectual property by throwing that copyright notice there on the bottom. And it was a story that was told with words and pictures. And that, like I said, it's exactly what I do today for my job. And when you're telling a story with words and pictures together, you realize that they're teammates. And sometimes the words will tell part of the story alone, maybe, and also sometimes maybe the pictures will work alone to tell the story. The very last page of my book was the About the Author page. And that's where you learn about the author. And my About the Author page, when I was in 3rd grade, read, Jarrett lives in Worcester, Massachusetts. He goes to Gates Lane School. He liked making this book. And I love that last sentence. He liked making this book. I liked making books because I loved using my imagination, right? So I'd come home and I wouldn't wait for this to be a school assignment. And I would just take out pieces of paper and I would make my own books. And here are some characters that I invented when I was a kid. There was an egg and a tomato and a head of lettuce and a pumpkin. And they went to a haunted house where they were confronted by an evil blender and an evil toaster and an evil microwave. And I didn't have to make these books. This was not a school project. I just loved being creative. I just loved telling stories with words and pictures. I would make books. I would make my own comics. I would bring these comics in to show my classmates. And I would be so thrilled when they were entertained by my work. I started making little animations with my old camcorder, my old VHS camcorder, where I would just draw a stack of drawings and take a little video of each drawing so then it would look like the character was moving on their own. And then in high school, I was hired to be the cartoonist for the high school newspaper. And I loved the thought of I could share these ideas with people I don't even know. I don't even know. These other kids in my high school are reading my book, so that made me think, I want to get published. This is for real, 100% what I want to do with my life. So my last year of high school, I was still writing, I was still illustrating. After high school, I went to college to study art. I moved to Providence and eventually enrolled in the illustration department at Rhode Island School of Design. And in art school, you have to take classes where you're learning about color. You're taking drawing classes where you're learning about light and shadow and architecture and perspective. And even though I thought, I just want to draw these cartoons, I want to draw these characters, all of this kind of work was really important to then later inform the sort of cartoon or illustration work that I would later make. Because after learning how to paint and learning how to draw better, when I went back to drawing my cartoon characters, things started evolving and they started changing. And I took a lot of writing classes too. Every single semester, I took a different writing course because I knew in my heart that I wanted to be the author of the books. I was pursuing a degree in illustration, but I knew I also wanted to write the stories. Every single writing course I could get my hands on, but my most favorite was a class where we were learning how to write and illustrate picture books for kids. And in this class, we had to write our own book. And my book was called Hello, Said the Slug. And it was a story about this giant slug. He wanted to be friends with this kid. That kid had no patience for that giant slug. And I was really excited about this book. The class ended, and there I am, I'm a junior in college, and I thought, I could wait until I graduate to get rejection letters, or I could get those rejection letters right now as an undergraduate. And that's exactly what I did. I started submitting this book. It started getting rejected. It was rejected about a dozen different times from all of these different publishers. But I knew getting rejected would be a part of the process, so I kept writing. And I wrote a different book called Josh Had a Bad Haircut. Was excited how this book turned out. I was about to graduate from college. I sent this book out to a publisher. And did they like my new idea? They did not. This book was rejected by every single publisher that saw it. So now I had two books that nobody wanted. But I kept illustrating and I kept writing. And my grandparents thought, why don't you come home to Worcester and you can live at home? And I thought, what would make more sense if I moved to Boston without a job? And that's what I did. So I went to Boston with some friends, and I set up a little art studio in the corner of my bedroom, my little drafting table, and I got to work. And I thought, well, if these publishers don't like my stories, maybe they'd like my artwork. And if they liked my artwork, then they would hire me to illustrate a book that somebody else wrote. And so what I would do is I would paint a picture like this, and I would put the picture on a postcard. I'd print up 80 postcards. I mailed those 80 postcards out to 80 different people at all of these different publishers. And of the 80 people who received these postcards, how many of those 80 people got in touch with me? One is a good guess, but fewer than that. 0. Nobody did. Nobody did. So I printed up another 80 postcards, mailed them out. There was no response. Week after week and month after month, I'd mail out these postcards, and I wouldn't hear from anybody. And I was approaching the 2-year anniversary of my first book rejection. But I kept writing because that's what I love to do. And I wrote a book called Goodnight Monkey Boy, a story about a boy. He wears monkey pajamas. He doesn't want to go to bed. And then I painted this illustration here. And I took this illustration and I put it on a postcard. And I printed up 80 postcards. And I mailed those 80 postcards out to 80 different people at all of these different publishers. And of the 80 people who received the postcards with this image, how many people got in touch with me? One. This time one, yeah. One person did. I received an email from an editor at a publisher, and I should tell the kids in the audience some historical context. Back in the late 1900s, when we were to check our email, first thing we had to do is we had to turn our computer on, because back then we used to turn our computers off at night. And then, about 30 minutes later, the computer was ready to be used, and you would have to connect to the internet through a phone line. Now, you can ask your grown-ups what a phone line is. I don't have time to explain all of this technology. But it took a long time to get your email, and it made this god-awful sound, but then this friendly computer voice said, "You've got mail." And that's how we validated ourselves back in the late 1900s. So I got mail, and it was an editor at Random House, and she said, "I really like your work. Let me know if you're ever in New York City." She said, "If you are, I'd love to meet you and see some more of your stuff." So do y'all suppose that I happened to be in New York that next week? Yes, I went to New York that next week, and I met with this editor at this big publisher. I showed her all of my artwork, and I showed her all of my book ideas. And out of everything she saw, she liked one idea she liked so much that she published it. Goodnight Monkey Boy was published on June 12th, 2001. And this was the dedication to honor my grandparents who worked so hard on raising me and sending me to all of those art classes. And we had a big book signing in Worcester, Massachusetts. And there my grandparents were up in the middle of it all, enjoying all of the excitement of having that book published. So I kept writing. I kept illustrating. Books kept getting published. Not every single idea got published, but a good amount of them did. And so I'll tell you a little bit now about my creative process, and I will break down for you how I came up with the idea for this book, for the Lunch Lady series. When my first book was published, I went back to my old elementary school in Worcester, Massachusetts, and I was setting up my slide projector, another piece of historical context for you. And I was in the cafetorium, which is, half cafeteria, half auditorium. And I looked across the room and I saw a woman from my past that I hadn't seen in years. It was Jeannie, my old lunch lady, and she was still at the school, busily preparing meals for the day. So I went up to her and I said, "Hi, Jeannie, how are you?" And she looked at me and I could tell I was familiar to her. She looked at me and she put her hand on her hip and she said, "Stephen Krosoczka." And I was amazed that she knew I was a Krosoczka, but Stephen is my uncle who was 20 years older than I am. They weren't classmates. She was his lunch lady too. So we just got to talking, and she told me all about her grandkids, and that blew my mind. I didn't know my lunch lady had grandkids, because I didn't know she had kids, because I didn't know at the end of the school day she went home, right? I thought she lived in the kitchen. I never thought about this before. So this got me to thinking, and I began to brainstorm a story about the secret lives of lunch ladies. What would they be hiding from us? So in my notebook now, I'm sketching out ideas, and I'm thinking about, okay, it's a picture book. I thought it was a picture book, and I thought it was about these kids who debated what they thought their lunch lady did with herself, right? And they all had these different ideas. One kid thought, our lunch lady is an opera singer. Another kid said, no, our lunch lady is a taxi driver. But one character said, our lunch lady is a spy who knows karate. And that to me was the more interesting story to tell. But then now that story will no longer fit into the format of a picture book. But this is the idea I'm interested in. So you put your idea before, like your ideas for the story before what kind of book format it will take. And I just kept sketching out the character, brainstorming ideas for the story. Would she wear a costume? Would she not wear a costume? I bet she's so tired at the end of the day, she doesn't, she just has a TV dinner for herself in front of Wheel of Fortune or something with a comfortable sweater. And then I invented all of these other characters like her sidekick, Betty, Hector, Terrence, and Dee, these three kids who have breakfast at the school. And then her sidekick, Betty, would invent all of the spy gadgets. So she has a spork phone, a spatchicopter, fish stick, nunchucks, because people at the school can't know about her double life. So then I had a chance to be a part of this book. Guys Write for Guys Read. I contributed to this book, and we were asked to update a story we'd written as a kid. Was one of the few visual artists involved. I thought, let me revisit some artwork. And I found this comic I made as a fifth grader. And as an adult, I continued the story. And when I did, I remembered why I loved comics so much when I was a kid and how much fun I had making comics when I was a kid. And I put together a pitch to show the publisher what I was thinking. Now, this was way back in 2004, 2005, and publishers weren't really into making graphic novels for kids. And I remember, I wrote about this on my MySpace blog, saying, I've just submitted this story, I hope they like it. And the publisher first, they didn't know what to do with it. But eventually they said, okay, we see what you're doing here. We're gonna give this whole graphic novel thing a try. These books are gonna happen, and now I need to know how to draw these characters over and over and over again. Oh, that was bound to happen, right? That was bound to happen once during my talk. Oh, there we go. And so you have to just learn how to draw the characters consistently. And you have to do research. Any book, you do some research. So I talked to a lot of lunch ladies. I photographed their industrial mixers and their kitchens and their serving areas. And if you know the books, you'll recognize in these photos some of the environments and settings for the book. Now, I have to write the plot for the book. And when I was a kid, I learned how to write by using a story mountain and trying to figure out exactly, what's going to happen. Hold on one second here. What's going to happen? The beginning of the story, and then the rising action, and the climax of the story, the falling action, and the resolution. And then I make page after page of notes on what I want to tell in the story. And then I lay out the story. So with this book, I know I was given 96 pages. I make 96 little rectangles, and I try to figure out what event will fall on which page. And I flesh all of that out. And as you can see, I'm moving things around, and I'm saying, no, this makes more sense over here instead. And every page starts off like this, a small little thumbnail sketch. And I'm just trying to recreate how the story is read, starting, at the top left to right and then down. And I also have written a script. So I have the script, I have the sketches, I send that all to my editor, and then I get feedback. And I have to revise and edit and rewrite it. Again, that first draft is still just the beginning. You're at the very beginning of the process. But after 5 or 6 different rewrites, I can work on the final artwork. And here are my tools. I use non-photo blue pencils. I use erasers, just in case. I have ink. I have brushes. And I have a pen. And mostly I draw with a brush. I save the pen for maybe some of the small details of the face. But I start by sketching out what's called a gesture sketch, a very loose sketch, where I'm just trying to sort out where the head and the torso and the arms and legs, how that's all going to fit together. I sketch out the details on top of that loose sketch. And then I'll take out my ink, and I'll dip my brush into the ink, and I'll draw the finished line work. And I draw with a brush because you get a very dynamic line when you draw with a brush. Apply a lot of pressure, that line will be thick. To apply just the slightest bit of pressure, that line will be thin. And with the flick of a wrist, that line quality is going to go from thick to thin. And I drew with non-photo blue because now I can scan in that artwork at black and white. And the computer can't see all of that pencil work. So I don't have to go through and erase all of the pencil marks on all of the artwork, bring the artwork over to my scanner. Now in Photoshop, I type out the text, select the shades of yellow and the shades of gray. And then they print out one copy of the book. All eyes are on that one copy, and we are searching for mistakes. We want to find mistakes. For instance, here, I want her to say, "Hiya!" But the copy editor is pointing out that she's saying, "Hiya." Not the same vibe, right? So I have to give them new art. I have to go in and edit the art some. But then the book gets printed, and I get to hold it in my hand for the first time. And this is the most exciting step, because up until now, this has been thoughts and notes and artwork and computer files. It's yet to be a book that I can pick up and hold in my hand, and it's all I had ever dreamed about. And from the time that I ran into my old lunch lady to the day this first book was printed and published, 8 years had gone by. So as many years of just, sketching out, brainstorming, wondering, doubting, but now there are 10 books in the series, and this is what all of the artwork looks like when you stack them atop one another. So I look at that photo, and that is a significant chunk of my life right there. So I have the 10 Lunch Lady books. You may have also seen the Platypus Police Squad series. There is The Frog Who Croaked, The Ostrich Conspiracy, Last Panda Standing, and Never Say Narwhal. I also am still making picture books. You may have seen Peanut Butter and Jellyfish, or It's Tough to Lose Your Balloon, or Naptastrophe, which is directly inspired by something that happened with our daughter. And I'm also the co-editor of a series called Comic Squad with my friends Matt and Jenny Holm, who created Squish and Baby Mouse. And we would come up with different themes and get some of our cartoonist, graphic novelist pals to make comics based on that theme. So there was recess, and then there was lunch. And the most exciting thing, aside from Nathan Hale's involvement there, was if you look right above the M in Comic Squad, Charles Schulz Creative Associates created a little Snoopy comic for us. And Detention is the most recently published book in the series. And I also have created a series, new volumes in a series for Star Wars Jedi Academy. So there's a new class, and the most recently published book is called The Force Oversleeps. Now, I feel so lucky, right? Because I get to use my imagination as my full-time job. And then kids read those books. And kids turn up to my book signings, and they know the books better than I do. And I'm hearing from parents and caretakers and teachers across the country of kids who are reading my books and making comics and drawings after my books. One of the biggest highlights in my career came when I saw a kid, the first time I ever saw this, his birthday party theme was after one of my books. And aside from the fact that cake looks delicious, I thought, that kid, I'm going to be a part of his childhood for the rest of his life. He'll always have this photo in his family photo album. So when I was sent this photo, I framed it and I put it in front of my drafting table. This is back in 2001. And with every single move that I've made since then, this is always the first thing I set up. I put it up next to my desk. And it's such a privileged place to have that, kids are making Halloween pumpkins, or they're turning up to my book signings dressed as lunch lady. Or they're dressing up as my characters for Halloween. One family made a baby room, which, I kind of concerned for the long-term health of this child. They're 10 now. They seem to be doing fine. I even once, twice I got to see my name up in Times Square because kids voted my books as some of their favorites of the year. And for me, it all goes back to the fact that I was a kid who loved stories. Again, I'll tell you the reason why I love stories so much is because I loved Snoopy so much when I was a kid. Because I carried that Snoopy doll around with me, because I read all of those Snoopy comics, because I learned how to draw by copying the drawings of Charles Schulz. And that works out well because that was the end of my slideshow. And so we could actually, if we could turn the house lights up some, and we don't need the screen anymore because I'm going to do some drawing up here. And I'm also, would anyone like to ask a question? I'd be happy to entertain some questions. You have a question right here in the front? Do you want to ask it? How did I make all of the books? Time, patience, stress, anxiety? No, hard work. Just hard work. That's how I made all of those books, yeah. Should be yes. Oh, would there be figures based on some of my books? Lunch Lady and Platypus Police Squad and Punk Farm have all been in development to be movies in one way or another over the past several years. And when that happens, the rights to make a toy gets frozen. So should they ever make a movie, odds are then there'll be figures because the movie company will do something. Yeah. Sure, thank you. Other questions? Okay.
Are those going to be live or animated?
I'm not entirely sure. They've all gone through different incarnations of both, actually. So, you get really close, and then something happens, and they change their mind. So I'm not going to know what it's going to look until I'm actually sitting in the theater, and the lights go down, and it gets projected. Yeah. All right. Well, go ahead. Oh, that's a great question. So my grandparents were very supportive. Yeah, I had a lot of teachers that were always very supportive too. The teacher who hired me to be the cartoonist for the school newspaper, like I mentioned, Mrs. Beatty, who talked about art, and there were no such thing as mistakes, just you make something new. But when I was taking classes at the Worcester Art Museum, I was taking a comic book class, and I walked in with this book one day, and it was like how to draw comics. It was very specific. How to draw comics in the style of a certain comic book company. And I was so excited. I read it cover to cover, and I showed it to my teacher, Mark, and the blood just drained from his face, and he looked at me and said, forget everything you know, and just follow your own path, follow your own style. Don't feel like you need to draw a certain way in order to be successful. Draw the way you draw and embrace your style. And that was the best advice as an artist I've got my entire life. Yeah. Yes?
When did you know?
When did I know I wanted to do this professionally? And I think I more or less always did. When I look back on it now, it was just a direct line from those grade school book projects to what I'm doing now. But certainly when I was in high school and you were really thinking about college or what you're going to do after graduation, I couldn't fathom a different path for me. I was so tunnel vision on this is what I wanted to do. Yes? What's my favorite drawing that I ever drew? I don't know that I have any one favorite drawing, but I have a book called Punk Farm on Tour, where there are a lot of big crowd scenes of all these different animals at punk concerts. And there's some in there that I worked really hard on. Yeah. Crowd scenes are difficult. Yes?
So how did you arrive?
How did I arrive at my style? I guess I just, like many of you, copying Snoopy comic strips when I was a kid, and then or any cartoon character that you may have loved as a kid, and I would draw like Batman, I would draw the Ninja Turtles, and like artists from the beginning of time would study under other artists, emulate their style, and then over time they'd sort of you make it your own. I always would tell people my two biggest influences were Charles Schulz and John Singer Sargent. So in college we had to copy famous paintings, and I copied some by John Singer Sargent. So I really feel like my love of Charles Schulz's work when I was a kid, coupled with the love I gained for John Singer Sargent as a college student, I think helped push me to where I went. You have a question? We have 3 kids, Zoe, Lucia, and Xavier. Xavier's 1, and we've given him a crayon, and he thinks they are delicious. But Zoe and Lucia both really love to draw. They both have really taken to it, and not in a way that we sort of push it on them, but we also know there's a lot of value to having time, not being on a screen, and just having unscheduled time at home to just use your imagination. So often, especially during the school year when everything is so busy, on the weekends they might want to get on a show, and we'll have, at least an hour time with a sketch pad before you go on an iPad. And then 3 or 4 hours later, they forget they ever wanted to go on the iPad in the first place, and they're just drawing. And our eldest even, she's gone so far as to creating marketing campaigns for her books and hanging them around the house. And on the back, it's here are the other books by the author. And they're pitching me ideas all the time. And I'm thinking I don't want to use that because maybe in 20 years, you will write the book about the Mermaid Hotel or something like that, So yeah, they love it. They really do. Okay, so the first thing, I'm going to draw a couple of pictures. I don't know, do those lights come up a little brighter at all? So the first thing I draw is a shape. Every cartoon character I start by just drawing a shape or two. So I start with an upside down teardrop for the lunch lady character. And then I draw a regular ended teardrop. And that will be that character's head and torso. And then I sort out where the character's arms and legs go. Now on top of that, I'll sketch out the details of the characters here. And I might look at that and make some adjustments and make sure the proportions of the head to the body are correct. So maybe her head is a little big, smaller. And I'll sketch out the character's hair. Now, once I have everything sketched out, draw the finished line work. Come in and confidently lay in that line work because I worked out the problems in the sketch. Now the blue that I use here for the presentation is just a marker, and I did that just so you could see those marks from afar. But when I'm at home, I have that non-photo blue pencil. Artwork, only that black ink will get picked up. Now there's this game that I like to play called the Scribble game. I don't know if y'all have ever heard of that game. Is there any young artist out there that would like to come up and draw a scribble for me? My friend in that Snoopy hat. Only if you come up and tell me where you got that Snoopy hat, because I hear it is not available in the gift shop. That is an amazing Snoopy hat. What is your name?
Daniel.
Daniel? Can you show everybody this hat? This is, look at that.
I'm the secretary.
Thank you. Good plug. Okay, so Daniel, could you draw a scribble for me? Okay.
Johnny, it easier or
Hard.
hard?
Okay. Awesome. Okay, thank you. Wow. Okay, yeah, you are a man of your word.
Yep.
All right, Daniel. So now I'm going to try to make a picture out of this. And let's see. Let's take a look at this. I see a box here. I'm going to get a different marker here. Hold on. Box.
Yep.
Box. Now, here, are zooming instead of somehow replaced his doghouse for a cardboard box. All right, thank you, Daniel. Thank you. Is there any other young artist that'd like to draw a scribble? Come on up. What is your name?
Micah.
Hi, Micah. I'm Jarrett. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet
Draw a scribble for me?
you. Yes.
Okay, right, go for it. Okay, thank you, Mike. All right, let's see. Do you see anything? I see. There you go. Here, Micah. You can take that. There you go. And Daniel, I'll give you yours later, okay? Yeah. Is there anyone else, any other young artists that would like to come and draw a scribble? There's someone back there. I'm sorry, I can't see you back there, but come on out. And what is your name? Cody. Cody, come on up, Cody. Nice to meet you. I'm Jarrett. How are you, man?
Good.
Thanks for coming up, man. Okay, ready? 1, 2, 3, and scribble. Hey. All right. Wow. Did you know Daniel from before? Have you met each other? Okay. I see a mother pterodactyl feeding.
Oh, great, because as a little kid, I was afraid of pterodactyls.
Ah, revenge. Oh, should I draw you? Then I'll draw you. I'm glad that we could work through your stuff, man. So just hang this above your bed. Get home. All right, there you go. There you go. Okay, we'll do one more. What is your name? Colton, come on up, Colton. All right, Colton, thanks for coming on up. I'm Jarrett. Nice to meet you. Okay. Okay, thank you, Colton. Okay, let's see what we see here. Let me see. I want to go with the whole Snoopy theme again. So together, make sure you leave enough room. Here we go. There we go, Colton. Thanks for coming out. So here's what I love about that game is that if you're bored, you can play that at any time with anyone. And it could be a great way to start a story because sometimes you're just staring at a blank piece of paper and you just don't know what to draw or you don't know what to write. And then you can get stuck. You could spend hours staring at a blank piece of paper. But if suddenly there's a scribble there, you might find something in there. And that might lead you to a story, might lead you to something very unexpected. So I want to thank everybody for spending time with me. And I want to thank everyone at the Charles M. Schulz Museum who worked so hard to get me here. I'm such a thrill. To come all the way from Massachusetts, it's been such a thrill already, and I've only been here for about an hour. So I'm excited to spend the rest of the day with you all. So thank you so much.
Did you already take a bookmark?
Yeah.
Two for one pass. Do you like to ice skate? Yes.
Oh, nice.
That's hilarious.
That's perfect. Perfect for the figure skater.
I compete, yeah.
Oh, I did?
In row square? Oh, yeah.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, definitely.
Do you do sketches too?
Yeah.
You can go. Thank you.
Hero who's a real hero. You know, heroes became pretty kind of psycho. I'm a complete nut for Hal Foster.
The publicity.
Yeah, then there's the business aspect.
Oh yeah, that's the stuff I don't like.
Yeah, we gotta put some drawings for it or whatever.
You can go. Thank you.
This is